In this overall project of urban regeneration, we also were able to cross a very up-to-date topic for us in this moment, policy issue, which is circular economy. And we did it thanks to a European Horizon 2020 funded project, which is called REFLOW. So, as I was saying, the circular economy is a policy issue for us for, I will say, 3-4 years explicitly addressed by the city of Milan. We have some target. We have set some targets that you can see here. We also belong to some international networks such as the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and we are trying to do also a small-scale project in the city in order to test some effective practices. Of course, turning the city into a circular one is something very complex and ambitious. So for this reason, we are collaborating a lot with private stakeholders, and we also decided to focus on some issues in particular. One of these is food, another one is fashion and design, and the third one is a little bit more cross-sectoral, which is urban metabolism. As I was saying, we do own some public assets, and they are, yes, municipal covered market. We own 23 in all the city of Milan. They are very different one from another, because some of them are placed in the city center and very appealing neighborhood, some others in very not very, but I would say more the private neighborhoods. But what do they have in common? All of them is that the new habits, the new consumer habits made them some decaying facilities, and the interest for citizens in them had slowly declined during years. Also, the buildings, more or less, they do all were in need of some refurbishment, and so we started to think about this approximately 4 years ago. So how to relaunch these public assets in our city. We decided that it was time to change the administrative and the managerial framework, because the managerial one was really crazy at the time, in the sense that the municipality used to have a one-to-one relationship with all the single retailers present in the market. So you should consider that we have 23 markets with more or less 20 to 30 retailers in each. So we do had contracts with the single retailers that did occupy a space within. So administratively and also from a managerial point of view, this was really a very massive burden, and it was not for sure enhancing a dimension of efficiency for us. In 2013, there was a first experiment and the first attempt to pilot a new formula, and we tested it in a market, in a neighborhood, not a central one, quite in the outskirts. It's called Lorenteggio. And so we tried to collaborate with the local association in order to help them and accompany the retailers that were present in the market. So we asked to the association to accompany this retailer in order to propose to the administration a new model for the market. From a legal point of view, so from forming a new legal entity among the retailers, so they created a consortium, which is actually in Italy an independent single entity, and they also presented a renovation project that was to be funded in part by the municipality and in part by the retailers with the own resources. The local association were very crucial, and they were a pivot for us, because they were able to also start to hybridize the activities held within this market with not just activities related to selling food, but also activities related to strengthening social inclusion. So, for example, they hold a space within the municipal market where they do provide some education courses in the afternoon or aggregation activities for the inhabitants of the neighborhood. So this was a first attempt that was inspiring for us in order to start to think back how this model could be scaled. So we decided to restart this this process, as I said, 4 years ago, and we picked 3 markets in particular. Of course, we didn't pick them by chance, but this work was, there was an analysis before on the bottom in which we tried to cluster the 23 markets into different categories in order of the value of the land they were occupying. So if they were in the city center or in the outskirts, also the entity of the refurbishment work that were necessary, the number of places within the market that were not occupied at that moment. So we tried to cluster them, and we picked 3 markets with 3 different situations. So one was our winning stars, we say, because it was in the city center, very in a very bourgeois area, and also the business in there was going extremely well, but still it did need a refurbishment from one side, and also we needed to re-establish the fares paid by the retailers and the managerial model, because still it was the one-to-one mechanism, and it was not working in an efficient way. And then we picked the other 2. The second one was in a, let's say, radical chic area. So it was not really in the very city center, but still it was in an area with some gentrification process going on. And the third one was in the outskirts, so in a less advantaged area. So basically, we try to set up a new financial mechanism in order to, and also an administrative tool in order to reframe the managerial model and reframe the economic flows coming from these 3 markets. So basically, we opted for a concession of use. So this was the administrative framework. So we did launch a public tender for a concession of use for the 3 markets to be assigned just to single legal entity. And we did put a base price that could be also be increased by the proponents. And this base price was calculated through an economic and financial plan when we tried to set the net actual value approximately close to 0, and the internal rate of return approximately near to 6, 7, 8%, something that was not as remunerating as a completely private investment, but that was still acceptable by private operators. We also discounted the refurbishment cost, so the fare could be a little bit more affordable for the legal entity. In this larger process, we also won a European fund through the project REFLOW, which is focusing on local agri-food product and on co-producing circular solutions. So we decided to to implement the REFLOW pilot within the municipal market. And the idea was not just limit our regeneration process to the managerial, administrative, and cash flow side, but also to some innovation inputs coming from this European project. So starting to co-create and co-design with the retailers technological solution to turn the market more innovative and more sustainable. So this is a sum up. We renovate the management model. We worked on a financial economic plan, and we also tried to boost innovation thanks to the opportunity that was coming from this international European project, which is currently running, and it's going to end in 2022. So this is my last slide. We can say that in the urban scenario today, there are some hybrid businesses, and we try to leverage on this hybridization, try to put together different functions dedicated to these public assets, which are the municipal markets. So we try to renovate them, not just physically, but also in terms of activities. We also try to strengthen the relationship with the community, asking to the new manager of the markets to foresee an agenda of activities dedicated to citizens, so activities with the aim of social cohesion and social integration, so activities for families, courses for people who don't speak Italian, and so on and so forth. We also try to work on a more solid economic and financial plan, because the previous fair were extremely low and were not representing the correct market value. And finally, we try to test a new model of production and consumption, adopting an innovative way of collaborating through the REFLOW project. So in order to support also a sustainable green transition towards the circular economy paradigm. So this is what we did and what we are still doing, because the project, of course, is not over. And if you have any question, I'm happy to answer.